Okay guys, today we are going to work on solving equations by clearing the fractions. So what that means is we're going to have equations to solve for x, and they're going to contain fractions. And we're going to use a method called clearing the fractions because it makes it a little bit simpler. Alright, so let's get started. We have this problem here where we need to solve for x. Rather than going through the normal process of combining like terms and then solving using all these fractions, we're going to clear the fractions. And what you do to do that is you multiply both sides of the equation. That means this side and this side. And you have to multiply every single term on each side by the least common denominator. So look at your denominators, 8, 2, and 4. Okay, in this case it's 1, so you might want to write it as a 1. That might help. Find the least common multiple of those numbers. The least common multiple of 8, 2, and 4 is 8. 8, 2, and 4 all go into 8 evenly, so that's my least common denominator. And we're going to multiply everything by 8. You might want to write it as 8 over 1 because we're multiplying fractions. And it's a little easier to read it as 8 over 1. Now, we're going to cross cancel when we do this. So if you don't know how to cross cancel, you might want to go back and look at a video I posted on how to cross cancel when you're multiplying. Right here where we have an 8 here and an 8 here, they just cancel out. And your answer is 3 over 1. And if we do this right, all of these fractions should turn out to whole numbers like that. Until you get really comfortable with this multiplying, you might want to do this off to the side. So for instance, I'm going to distribute this 8 to everything, starting with the 3 halves. So on the side, you can do 3 halves times 8 over 1. Cross cancel. That means look at these two numbers. They're both divisible by 2. Divide them both by 2. Then multiply straight up. So that's just 12. Again, that should happen if we're doing this correctly. The whole point of this is we are getting rid of those fractions by doing this. Then you're going to do the 8 times the 5/4. So 4 times 8. Cross cancel. Divide both of these by the factor 4, 1, and 2. Then multiply across. That gives us 10. And then this is just 8 times 2. They're both over 1, so they're just whole numbers. So you do 8 times 2, that'll give you 16x. Now we have an equation with whole numbers. We can solve it like we normally solve, dealing with whole numbers. We'll probably get a fraction for our final answer, but at least we don't have to deal with those fractions during that process. So we're going to combine like terms. This should all be review. 12 and minus 16, or 12 plus negative 16 is negative 4x. Still have plus 10. We need to isolate x, so we subtract 10 from both sides. Negative and a negative 4x over here. Now we divide both sides by negative 4. Now, a negative over a negative is going to be positive, but 7 divided by 4 is simply 7 over 4. And as long as that's simplified, you can leave your answer like that as an improper fraction. So that's all there is to clearing the fractions. Okay, we'll do 2 more examples. Okay, now in this example, we have some mixed numbers. If you happen to have any mixed numbers, you need to convert those mixed numbers to improper fractions before you get started. So right here we have a mixed number. I'm going to go ahead and convert that to an improper by doing 3 times 2 plus 1. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. The denominator stays the same, and I'm just going to cross that out and replace it with 7 over 2. All right, now we can clear the fractions like we did earlier. We're going to multiply both sides of the equal sign, put it in parentheses, show it like this, because you're going to have to multiply every term, by the least common multiple of 3 and 2. That's my denominators. Least common multiple of 3 and 2, they both 6 evenly. So we're going to multiply everything by 6. And when we do that, we should get whole numbers. So we have to distribute. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Someone just walked into the room. Okay, so we were multiplying 6 times 5/3. Do that on the side until you're really comfortable doing the cross-canceling in your head. So we're going to cross-cancel and divide both of these by 3. That becomes 1. That becomes 2. Then you multiply straight across. 2 times 5 is 10. So that's just 10. And don't forget, we also have to multiply 6 times x. So that's 6x. And then we'll do the other side of the equal sign. 6 times negative x is negative 6x. Then we'll do 6 times 5/3. That's the exact same problem I just did, so I know that's going to be 10 over 1 again. Plus 10 minus, now I'm doing this one right here actually, 6 over 1 times 7 over 2. Cross cancel, I can divide both of these by 2, and then that becomes 21. All right, now we just solve this equation like we normally solve equations. So I have x on both sides. I need to move those over so that they're on the same side. So I'll do that by adding 6x. You could subtract 6x from both sides also. This will become 12x over here. These cancel out. And I have minus 21. I'm going to go ahead and combine those two together here. 10 minus 21, or 10 plus negative 21, is negative 11. Then I need to move this 10 over, so I'm going to subtract 10. These cancel. I have 12x still on the left side, negative 21 on the right side. Then I divide by 12. Dividing is just like writing a fraction, so when we say negative 21 over 12, that's the same as negative 21 divided by 12. We can simplify it, though, so we do need to simplify it. They're both divisible by 3. So we'll divide them both by 3 and get negative 7 over 4. That's your answer. Again, improper fractions are fine as long as they're simplified. Okay, let's try this with one more problem. So this one's more complicated because it has this distribution in here. When you have distribution, you need to do that before you clear the fractions. First things first, mixed numbers still need to be changed to improper. So right here I have a mixed number. I'm going to rewrite that as an improper. Maybe I should do that first. So we're going to rewrite this as a mixed number, 2 times 3 plus 1. 6 plus 1 is 7 over 3. The denominator stays the same. Don't forget it has x. So 7/3 x. All right, now we have to distribute. So you have to distribute if there's any distribution to do first. All right, so the 8/3 times the 5 over 2. You can do it on the side. Cross cancel again because it's faster. Divide them both by 2, and we end up with 20 over 3. Now when we do the next one, we're doing now 8/3 times 7/4. Again, cross cancel, it makes it simpler. Divide them both by 4. And we get 14 over 3. All right, so that's the distribution. We're going to rewrite everything else in the equation. The right side to negative 12 minus 7/3 x. Okay, I'm going to erase some of this work just to give me a little more room. All right. Now we can clear the fractions. Okay, you have to distribute first. You do have to deal with those fractions during the distribution. That's okay. Now we can clear them out. And what makes this easy when we're clearing the fractions is all of our denominators are 3. So the least common multiple is just 3. So we multiply every single term by 3. That means 3 times this. Now, whenever, I'm not going to do this on every problem, but 3 over 1 times 20 over 3. The 3's cancel, because you can divide them both by 3. They become 1s, and your answer is just 20. So the 3's, when you have a 3 in the numerator and a 3 in the denominator, and they're the same number, they simply cancel out. So that becomes just 20x. Here, when we do it over here, the 3's just cancel out, and that becomes 14. Okay, on the right side, we're going to multiply 3 times negative 12, get negative 36. And when we multiply 3 times 7 over 3, the 3's just cancel, and you're left with 7x. Let's separate that. All right, go about solving. So we need to get the x's together first. We have 2 of them over here. I'm going to combine like terms. That becomes 23x. Then I need to move the x's so that they're on the same side. I have x's over here. So I'll add those minus 7x's. So we'll add 7x to both sides. This will become 30x. Still have a negative 36 on the right. Now you work away from the variables, so we're going to subtract 14 from both sides to get rid of 14. They'll cancel out here. And this will be negative 50. And then we divide both sides by 30. And remember, 50 divided by 30 is just 50 over 30. So our answer, and it's negative 50 over 30. But I can simplify that. They're both divisible by 10. So if I divide them both by 10, that gives me a negative 5 over 3. And that's my answer. I mean, that's about as complicated as these problems get. So the only things you might have to do before you can clear the fractions is change mixed numbers to improper fractions and distribute. For those of you that like to have a list of steps to do, these are three steps you have to do, okay, before you can solve. Maybe I should call it 4 steps and add solve to the end. But the first step is to change all the mixed numbers to improper fractions. Okay, sorry about that. The phone rang. I was getting lots of interruptions during this one. Okay, so first step is to change the mixed numbers to the improper fractions. Second step is to distribute if you have distribution. Then the third step is you clear the fractions by multiplying every single term by the least common denominator. All right, and then lastly, you're going to solve an equation. Your answers will probably be fractions, but after you clear them, you won't have to deal with fractions while you're solving. So if you need to, pause this screen so that you can copy down these steps. But that is the way that we solve equations with fractions. It's the simplest and most efficient way to solve these big complex equations that have a bunch of fractions in them. So practice this a little bit and let me know if you have questions.